Hi, I'm the True Gamer, giving off my vast knowledge so you may understand games a bit better. For the next two reviews, possibly a third one if I can find one that matches my criteria, is going to be about games that had one definitive review on the game that, while it does a good job talking about why it's bad, doesn't really go into actual depth about what's wrong with it. That's not to say that other people haven't made a review. It's more that that review has kind of become the quintessential, the one that everyone kind of references or is the only big one that people actually notice. Which is the problem, but that could be a whole other thing. And one of those games that we are going to cover is Two Worlds, that was covered by most notably Pro Jared. I'm not going to get into Pro Jared, just know he's been a long time reviewer and still does content on dimes, but he's more of a Twitch guy now. But point being is, he made the definitive review for Two Worlds. And while there have been others that have actually gone in depth about talking about the game, none of them actually bothered to explain really in depth about what's wrong with it. Crypt Keeping Gaming, I can't remember, it's on the screen right now, is the only one who I ever noticed bothered to go into depth, though that one is more lighter, still more in depth, but And I thought his review was funny, but in any case, point being is, I think we should cover Two Worlds more critically. Like, for example, none of them even mention the history of the game because there is something interesting that is mentioned about the games, but is never directly stated by anyone else. See, the games were originally a part of a series that the game's developers, Reality Pump Studio, originally made called Polaris, and its sequel. And this was supposed to be the third game, but somewhere along the game's development, they decided to make it its own game, and not make it an RTS. Which in some case actually explains some of the game's details, but not entirely. I might get into this, but not really. I would mention more stuff, but really even any other stuff I could mention wouldn't be interesting than just talking about the game in and of itself. So hey, future me, and I know this video should have came out a lot sooner. Like, originally I wanted this video out before December, but a lot of stuff got in the way, and well, a seasonal job I got at the time took up a lot of my time and energy, so it made it harder to do this video. However, before I was able to release that video, like I was planning on releasing it on December 18th, which was ironically my birthday, the literal same day, Majuular releases a big ass video about the game. Like, what? And like, I would like to note that if you need to choose between these two videos, go watch his. His is way more better in my opinion, and while I do think it's a little more interesting, I do feel like his review is a little flawed. Mostly because, I don't know, like, kind of like Jared's video, I feel like his video targets some of the problems, but not the actual problems, you know what I mean? He's looking at the symptoms. I'll talk about them when we talk about them, but just so you know, I think that video is great. There's some problems, but those are just me things. So with that out of the way, let's actually talk about the review for Two Worlds. The game begins with an intro saying that the god Archival is dead. Except he's not really. We'll explain that in a bit. So the game actually begins with our main character named... Wow, they actually don't give him a nickname or anything. I'll call him Merc for the sake of ease since he's a mercenary. The official name done by the wiki, it's actually called The Hero, which is... I want to call him that, as we'll explain in a bit. In any case, he's riding with his sister, who is injured, from... They actually don't explain how she got injured, but whatever. While trying to find shelter, she is kidnapped by this guy, and the Merc goes around trying to find her for a few months, with gaining a lead soon enough. He is then soon meted by Gedohar, who tells him that he needs to meet his master, who explains to him what's up. The reason why he has kidnapped his sister is mostly so that they could make him collect pieces of the relic that are a part of his family's lineage. And his family is the only one who is able to collect the pieces without being cursed. The Merc treats this as insanity because he doesn't believe it, but his sister soon explains to him through notes, trust me, it doesn't really matter, After talking with them, he goes and meets with his sister through a node which connects them for some reason. They really do not explain it, they're just magically connected, and she tells him that their goal is to basically revive the god Archival, which I'll explain more in depth, but trust me, it doesn't really matter. And Gandalf is willing to help him out, mostly so that Kira will stay safe, for reasons that will again matter later on. And for the most part, that is the plot for all intents and purposes. But let me try to explain. Usually whenever I play an RPG, I usually stick to the main quest for a good chunk of it, and near halfway through the game, I will decide to veer off course and do a bunch of side quests, or sometimes just periodically going to do side quests, then saying to myself, what am I doing here, and then go back to the main plot, and kind of keep doing this until I hit the end. But for here, it's strangely built. Before we continue and talk about this critique a little more, I need to talk about something else, that being the game's graphic. And for a 2007 game, it's alright. The main character's models in the CGI is just bad. Like, I don't even know why they made them look like this. They just made them look out to be like some freak. I don't know why. But in any case, the models in and of themselves are fine, it's just there's not a good variety. Like, you'll see these same models throughout the entire game, and it causes a lot of issues. One of the more notable ones, for me at least, was trying to find side quests. Why? Because quest givers aren't really given any particular models that give them a unique look. Some do, but that's mostly because some of them are actually tied to the main quest, though only sort of. I'll explain it a bit, trust me. So trying to find some became a real hassle throughout most of the game, and whenever I did, I was lucky to find them. And the only way I was able to find them was because usually they're dressed up like this, given at least a different model than the townspeople model, which wasn't really all that helpful. So with them being harder to find, you think they would be more worthwhile. Not really, most of them are very basic, and the only side quest I would actually tell you to do is the one where you have to ask your old friend, which is the only time the game will ever reference the main character's past. For some reason, I'm not sure why. Anyway, basically he's the only way to gain access to an item called the teleporter stone, which allows you to do fast travel, and basically fast travel wherever you want. Which is really helpful when you could just place it down wherever you are, teleport back to town, sell your loot, all that stuff. It's really helpful. I did that throughout the entire game, and we'll talk about the game's economy in a little bit. But point being, only quest that I ever thought to myself was, like, really worth it. And that's mostly because the other quests don't really offer much of any real value. Any gold you can find off in the wild, which we'll talk about more, but just trust me on this. When I talk about the combat, you'll understand what I mean. And any XP I can find, I can again go out into the wild. And the stories around them aren't that particularly interesting and really do not tie to anything else happening in the plot. And that kind of comes back around to what I was trying to talk about. Most of the game's plot is really secular. Like, everything is so isolated from each other and the worlds around them that the only one that has anything sort of interesting is the water one, which is sort of there, but let's actually talk about it for a moment. So the water stone is hidden behind this temple, and the only way to get into the temple is getting the key, which has its own quest tied to it, trying to get the key, and a whole bunch of other stuff, but really none of that matters. None of them are tied to the temple in and of itself, or anyone really cares why you want to go into the temple in and of itself. Because here's the thing, the moment you do the temple and get the stone, the town becomes overrun with orcs and everyone dies. All quests that are available here are done, all shops are closed, everything's gone. Which is really surprising because this place is literally like the only time where your choices actually have some real consequence. Though to even call this a consequence is meaningless because, oh no, I lose a shop. And it's not like you can learn like a lot about this town to begin with. Like, you learn that these people have these guys here, but Why? Why does anyone care? Like, it even has its own name, but there's not a real explanation for why it is or how it is. You're not able to inquire more about it, and that really is strange, because here's the other thing. This is the only stone that has any real quest tied to it. By that I mean it's the only quest in the entire game involving the stone that actually needs you to do something else other than just walking to it. Because the Earth Stone, the Fire Stone, and the Wind Stone are all out in the wild, and you can just easily grab them whenever you want. Sure, you'll have to fight some stuff, but you're doing that already, so what's even the problem? And yes, they do have quests tied to them, but they are not required to do them. And the Water One's quests are only somewhat involved, which again ties into my point of, even finding these quests can be annoying than just going to them directly. And that gets into the other point I wanted to touch upon. When I talked about the game's story being secular, I really do mean that. Your story that is happening right now is very much unrelated to the rest of the game's plot. By that I mean, the plot of the Kagari clan and the Skellige clan don't matter. They don't matter to what you're doing right now. They will never be involved, never actually influence anything you're actually doing or have to change what you're doing. It doesn't matter what you're doing with this town or that town, none of it matters. As long as you're doing the main quest, nothing matters. Actually, speaking of the other factions, because yes, there are factions, and there's even a reputation point system for it, I'm just gonna be blunt here and say, all of this is just Elder Scrolls. Like, I know they're generic already, but like, come on, man. I mean, like, you have your Fighters Guild, you got your Mage Guild, you got your Necromancers. Yes, we're actually dealing with a problem like that in the game, and you could deal with it, but I didn't bother. You have your Thieves Guild, and also some Skyrim with the Empire and the Stormcloak here, dealing with that sort of stuff here. Not that it matters again. Like, sure, you can do quests for them and actually let me delve into something I have a problem with all the quests. That usually being, they are either brain dead or what the hell am I supposed to do? Let me use a quest as an example. Let's use Find Issa. It's a quest given to you by the Kagari clan, usually someone trying to just find him because he betrayed the clan and you need to find him. But here's the thing. The game gives you no clues on where to find him or where he even is. There's nothing in the game that tells you where you can find him. Or at least that's what I tried to do. I asked around town to try to find out anything, but nothing. Nobody told me anything. You know where he is? Right over to the right of the town. For some fucking reason. And no, I don't believe there is any quest tied to him again trying to find out what the hell happened or what it meant. Because it doesn't really even matter. Not mattering is kind of a pervasive term I kind of like using for this game. Because here's the other thing. The game doesn't really give a crap if you kill anyone. What do I mean by that? Literally what I mean. Well, sort of. Like, the towns will get on your cases, but otherwise, it doesn't really matter. As long as it's not being literally, like, stopping you from playing the game, nothing will really stop you from doing it. Like, for example, I was really on the end of my nerves when I was reaching the Kagari clan's hideout, and this guy wouldn't let me in. And I said to myself, fuck it, I'm just gonna kill him and get in there and just grab the relic. But when I killed him and entered, nobody reacted. Like, at all. And weirdly enough, I did this again for the Feast Town, which had the same result. Which really weirded me out, but I was like, maybe the game's crime detection system didn't work well, so it just said, fuck it. And I would like to just state here as a matter of fact, no, none of these quests are really worth it. None of these quests really end up anywhere near the tier of adequate. They're all boring. And like, some of them I can get. Some basic quests that are just boring are fine. But when it's the vast majority of them, it's a problem. And it's not like I did much exploring off on its own to begin with. And that was only tied to quests or when I was just bored out of my mind and went into a random direction for a little bit. Because for the most part, the game is really centralized on its roads. The game doesn't really want you to lead the roads anyway to begin with, so I never left. Not only that, it's where most enemies, usually monsters or usually humans, sometimes orcs, are really nearby, so again, I never left them. Usually going off into the wild was more when I wanted to collect items for something, but well, let's actually talk about the combat and the general gameplay. For the record, I am playing the PC version, so I am going to just more mention the PC control. Combat is just simple. You have one button, you press it, you do an attack. That's really it. No, I'm not joking, that really is most of the combat for me in most cases. Cause yeah, there's magic, but I'm not sure how you're supposed to build into it, because it's just there, and the way to make a spell better is to buy more of the same copy of spells and overlap them to increase their overall potential. But otherwise, it's something I had. And more cases than not, I just used it as a good heal up, so that's really it. There's also bows and arrows, but it was only something when I was dealing with another bow and arrow, unless I could just attack them, which again, most cases I did anyway, so it's there. It works a little differently than most, where you actually have to draw your bow before you can actually fire, which is really interesting, but eh. And unlike Oblivion, where you can actually move while you're drawing it, this one you have to stay in place before you can. And there's also varieties of them, but I never bothered. There's also traps, but we'll talk about that near the end, because I need to show you why they're so busted, because let me just tell you, this shit is broken. Bonds are so broken, I don't know who the fuck thought this was a good idea. You also have a horse where you can also use it to attack enemies with while you're on it, which only works for certain weapons and if you have the skill that allows you to do it, which is weird. And to mention horse riding for a moment, good lord, is this game not optimized to run with a horse on it. Like, at all. Like, I think the game could barely even handle it at times. Also, it's a little buggy, but then again, like Skyrim and all the Elder Scrolls games, yeah, horses are just fucking weird. Yeah, like, you have all these other skills here that you can gain into and use them whenever you want, but, like, trust me on this, they just don't matter. They don't matter at all. You don't need them. There's never a time where you actively need them. Like, just trust me, they're not worth it. And really, the only thing I can really talk about more is basically how I kind of played the game, which is usually like this. I would go down the road, just following the road, because everything leads to another thing, so it was a good idea to just do that for the while on the horse too, because it's a little faster. You can do it on foot, but trust me, you're better with the horse. Anyway, while riding around, if I ever found a bandit cap, which most of them are on the road, so it doesn't really even matter, I would fight them off, kill them all, loot the bodies, sell it off to town, because I could teleport whenever I want, so yeah, that was my loot. And yeah, this loot got boring real quickly. And really, the only reason why I did it so much was because I wanted to keep upgrading my gear. And that's mostly because of one neat mechanic the game has, where basically you could take one gear and another gear that are the same, mix them together, and get a better piece of gear. That's really it. It's actually really good and useful because at one point, I had upgraded my armor so much, nothing else I could find was anywhere close to it. And really, the downside to the armor I found around me wasn't really all that worth it, so I usually kept this on. And it carried me throughout the entire game until the final, well, technically second final boss, because, let me just tell you, let's actually talk about this now. For whatever reason, and I have no idea why, if the enemy is bigger than you, they have so much health and deal so much damage, it's quite ridiculous. I have literally no idea why it has this. I'm not sure why it does this. They're just so bustedly strong, they were able to one-shot me most times than not. It was really frustrating. And it's only frustrating in a sense because I would have to redo them. Because you see, death has no consequence here, meaning you literally can just go back into the fray once again, just running back to them, and their health probably hasn't healed by now. It depends really on the enemy, but more times than not, you could just go back to them and fight them again. So that's what I did. Really, the game's difficulty can barely pass. This is annoying. Because again, since you can be revived as many times, the game has no real way of challenging. So I basically did that throughout the entire game. And so much damage that I had to cheat just to deal enough damage just to win and just survive the attacks. I cannot joke to you, that happened. I literally do not know how the hell the game wanted me to handle this. Because here's the thing. My gear was perfectly fine for most enemies. Most enemies I fought weren't even a challenge. But when I fought this guy, it was a nightmare. I literally had no other option but to use traps in order to deal enough damage to him. Because look at this. My normal attacks were barely doing anything, but when I used the trap, holy fuck, the damage was more than enough to kill him. And with that being said, let's actually finish up the story because I am just so done with this game. Anyway, after collecting all the relic pieces, you give them to Rice while trying to claim your sister back. But Gandalf reveals to him that he's actually the one who masterminded this whole thing, and the reason why he wants to keep Kira safe is so that he can use Kira as a vessel for the god Aziral. Thus he betrays you and leaves you to die. But then these guys over here tell you, hey, we're helping you out. Who they are? I don't know. It doesn't really matter. The game doesn't really even bother to explain them. They are shown later and earlier with quests and other stuff, but I didn't do them, so they're just here. And basically, in order to reach the castle where Gandalf is, I need to go to one of the 5 towers in the world and either kill the one who hosts it so that I may enter the castle. But not before fighting Rice, the cheap prick, who's literally near impossible again. Like, I cannot stress this enough. He was the literal only annoyance in the game that made me say, really go fuck this game. Anyway, Gandalf then tells you after you defeat Rice, he basically explains why he's even doing this all to begin with. See, remember the taint? And now you're gonna look at me and say, the taint? What the hell's that? And I'm gonna look back to you and say, oh yeah, right, that thing. We never really explained it in plot because it doesn't really matter. Again, not a lot of this game's plot even matters. Anyway, the taint was something that's been affecting the world a bit and causing a lot of problems. Because you see, when Aziral was sealed, something entered into this world and the taint is whatever the fuck it wanted to enter. Something called the Ancients, which are just the Cthulhu monsters, I'm not sure what it is. Anyway, he wants to bring back Aziral so that he can basically take back the stage and basically guard the world. Well, maybe under his rule, but better than nothing. And you can decide to be like, yeah, I'm with you, or no, I'm against you. You get 2 separate endings, doesn't matter. I could go on and say a lot of stuff, but this game sucks. The story is just terrible. The gameplay is suffering, succotash is boring. The world is just boring as sin. I really couldn't care less. The music it's actually alright. I didn't mention it, but it's alright. The intro music for the menu is actually pretty good. Yeah, but that's it. That was the only thing I liked. Because, again, this game sucks. But at least now you know why it actually really sucks in real detail. Next time, we'll be talking about the Legend of Alandar.